The morning light filtered through our floor-to-ceiling windows, casting long shadows across the marble kitchen island, where Emily sat picking at her organic yogurt. She looked up at me with those green eyes that once made my heart skip, now cold and calculating. "You seem different lately, Alex," she said, setting down her silver spoon with deliberate precision. "Happy. Almost cheerful. It's unsettling." I poured myself coffee from our $1,000 espresso machine, savoring the rich aroma. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was about to destroy our perfect life, and I'd never felt more at peace. "Is that so wrong?" I asked, leaning against the granite countertop. "A man can't be happy in his own home?" Emily's perfectly manicured fingers drummed against the marble. "It's just strange. You've been working late, coming home with this satisfied smile, like you know something I don't." "Oh, sweetheart," I thought, "if only you knew how right you are." "Maybe I'm just appreciating what I have," I said, watching her face carefully. "Speaking of which, congratulations are in order, aren't they?" Her fork clattered to the floor. "What do you mean?" I took a slow sip of my coffee, letting the silence stretch between us like a taut wire. Our smart home's ambient lighting seemed to dim, as if the house itself sensed the coming storm. "Because I know you're pregnant," I said finally, my voice steady as granite. "And I'm definitely not the father." The color drained from Emily's face like water from a broken dam. Her mouth opened and closed soundlessly, reminding me of a fish gasping for air. The yogurt container slipped from her trembling hands, splattering across our pristine kitchen floor. "Alex, I don't know what you're talking about," she stammered, but her voice lacked conviction. Guilt radiated from her like heat from a furnace. I set my coffee mug down with deliberate care, the ceramic clicking against marble with finality. 3 weeks ago, Tuesday afternoon, downtown Boston, corner of Washington and Summer Street, you were wearing that blue dress, the one I bought you for our anniversary. You had your hand on a young man's back, laughing at something he whispered in your ear. Emily's breathing became shallow, rapid. "You were spying on me?" "Spying?" I chuckled, the sound bitter as burnt coffee. "No, Emily. I was coming back from a client meeting when I saw my wife being intimate with someone who definitely wasn't her husband. Call it unfortunate timing." She stood abruptly, her chair scraping against our imported Italian tile. "It's not what you think." "Sit down." The command in my voice surprised even me. Emily froze, then slowly lowered herself back into her chair. "We're going to have an adult conversation, and you're going to tell me the truth. All of it." For a moment, the only sound was the gentle hum of our refrigerator and the distant traffic from Beacon Street. Emily's hand shook as she reached for her water glass. "How long?" I asked. "Alex, please. How long?" She closed her eyes, tears finally spilling over her carefully applied makeup. 4 months. 4 months. While I'd been working 16-hour days to expand our tech company, while I'd been planning our future, she'd been planning hers with someone else. "Who is he?" "It doesn't matter. It matters to me." My voice remained calm, but inside, something cold and sharp was taking shape. "Who is he, Emily?" "Evan Miller," she whispered. He works at my company." "The intern." It wasn't a question. I'd seen him at the company Christmas party, barely old enough to legally drink, with that cocky smile and designer clothes his parents probably bought him. 24 years old, fresh out of college, living in a studio apartment in Allston. Emily's eyes widened. "How do you know about him?" "Because unlike you, I believe in being thorough." I pulled out my phone and scrolled through the photos I'd taken over the past 3 weeks. Hotel receipts, restaurant bills, text messages you thought you deleted. Should I continue? She was crying openly now, mascara streaking down her cheeks like black rain. "Alex, I'm sorry. I never meant for this to happen. But it did happen. For 4 months it happened. Every night you came home late from work meetings. Every weekend you had to catch up on projects. Every time you rolled away from me in bed, claiming you were tired. I stood, walking to our living room's panoramic windows that overlooked Boston Harbor. Tell me about the baby, Emily. The silence stretched so long I thought she might not answer. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely audible. I'm 8 weeks along. 8 weeks. I did the math quickly. We hadn't been intimate in over 2 months. She'd been claiming stress, work pressure, anything to avoid my touch. Now I knew why. Does he know? Yes. And what's his plan? What's your plan? Emily's sobbing intensified. We were going to figure it out. Maybe I could say it was yours. Stop. I turned from the window, and something in my expression made her recoil. Don't insult what little intelligence you think I have left. We both know exactly when we last shared a bed, and it wasn't 8 weeks ago. I walked back to the kitchen, stepping over the spilled yogurt that was already starting to smell sour. Our housekeeper would be here soon, but she'd find more than just a mess to clean up. Here's what's going to happen, I said, my voice taking on the same tone I used in hostile corporate negotiations. You're going to pack your things and leave. Today. Alex, no! This is my home too. Actually, it's not. I pulled a folder from my briefcase, documents I'd had my lawyer prepare 2 days ago. The house is in my name only. My company, my investments, my accounts, all mine. You signed a prenuptial agreement, remember? The one your lawyer said was just a formality? Emily's face went white as she realized the implications. You can't just throw me out. I have rights. You have the right to leave with your dignity intact, or you can make this ugly. Your choice. I slid the divorce papers across the island toward her. I'm filing for divorce on grounds of adultery. Massachusetts is a no-fault state, but adultery still affects asset division and alimony. I'll have nothing, she screamed, standing so quickly her chair toppled backward. How am I supposed to live? How am I supposed to raise a child? I looked at her for a long moment. This woman I'd loved, trusted, built a life with. The woman who'd shared my bed while carrying another man's child, who'd looked me in the eye every morning while planning her deception. That's not my problem anymore, I said quietly. You have a young, ambitious boyfriend who got you pregnant. I'm sure he'll step up and provide for his family. After all, that's what real men do. Emily's expression shifted from desperation to rage. You bastard! You cold-hearted bastard! I made one mistake. 4 months isn't a mistake, Emily. It's a choice. Multiple choices, made every single day. I walked to our front door and opened it. Your things will be packed and waiting on the porch by 5 p.m. I suggest you arrange somewhere to stay. And if I refuse to leave? I smiled then, and it wasn't a pleasant expression. Then you'll discover exactly how unforgiving I can be when someone tries to steal from me. And make no mistake, that's what you did. You stole 4 months of my life, my trust, and my future. The only question now is whether you leave quietly or whether this becomes a public spectacle. Emily grabbed her purse and keys with shaking hands. At the door she turned back, her face streaked with tears and ruined makeup. I loved you, Alex. I still love you. No, I said, closing the door between us. You loved my money, my house, my security, but you never loved me enough to be faithful. Through the window, I watched her stumble to her BMW, the one I'd bought her last birthday. She sat in the driver's seat for several minutes, crying and making phone calls. Probably calling Evan, telling him their secret was out. Probably calling her friends, looking for sympathy and a place to stay. I pulled out my phone and dialed my lawyer. Robert, it's Alex Forrester. Yes, I had the conversation. She's gone. No, it went exactly as we discussed. I need you to file the papers today. Yes, I have all the evidence we need. As I hung up, I realized Emily was right about one thing. I was happy. Happier than I'd been in months. There's something liberating about finally seeing clearly, about stopping the pretense and acknowledging reality. But this was just the beginning. Emily and her young lover had made their choices, and now they'd live with the consequences. All of them. I had work to do. The next morning, I sat in my home office surrounded by 3 monitors displaying everything I'd learned about Evan Miller over the past week. Amazing what you can discover about someone when you have the right resources and motivation. Evan James Miller, 24 years old, graduated from Suffolk University with a business degree and mediocre grades. Parents divorced, mother remarried to a dentist in Springfield, father moved to Florida and rarely spoke to his son. Current address: a cramped studio apartment on Commonwealth Avenue that cost him $1,800 a month, nearly his entire take-home pay as an intern at Hartwell & Associates. Emily's company. I'd been thorough, perhaps obsessively so. Bank records showed Evan lived paycheck to paycheck, supplementing his income with credit cards that were already maxed out. His social media painted the picture of a young man trying desperately to appear successful while drowning in debt. And now he was going to be a father. My phone buzzed with a text from my best friend, Dave. Heard Emily moved out. You okay? I typed back, never better. Want to grab lunch? Murphy's Pub, noon? Perfect. Murphy's was a dive bar in South Boston that served the best fish and chips in the city. More importantly, it was the kind of place where conversations stayed private and bartenders minded their own business. Dave was already there when I arrived, nursing a Guinness and looking concerned. He'd been my roommate in college, best man at my wedding, and the only person who'd never pretended to like Emily. You look good for a guy whose wife just left him, he said, as I slid into the booth across from him. That's because she didn't leave me. I threw her out. Dave's eyebrows shot up. Jesus, Alex, what happened? I ordered a beer and told him everything. Dave listened without interruption, his expression growing darker with each detail. So she's pregnant with the intern's kid and she was going to pass it off as yours? That was the plan, apparently. Christ. Dave shook his head. I never liked her, you know that, but this is low even for Emily. It gets better. I did some digging into young Evan's finances. He's broke, Dave. Completely underwater, and now he's got a pregnant girlfriend and no way to support her. What are you going to do? I smiled, and Dave actually leaned back in his seat. I'm going to give them exactly what they wanted, each other, without any interference from me. That doesn't sound like the whole plan. It's not. I pulled out my phone and showed him the photos I'd taken outside Emily's company building. Hartwell & Associates has a strict policy about workplace relationships, especially between supervisors and subordinates. Emily's in HR, which means she's technically in a position of authority over all interns. Dave studied the photos. Emily and Evan holding hands, kissing in the parking garage, her hand resting on his chest in an intimate gesture. You're going to get them fired. I'm going to let their own choices get them fired. There's a difference. Is there? I considered the question seriously. Emily made her choice when she started the affair. She made it again every day for 4 months. Evan made his choice when he decided to sleep with a married woman. I'm just ensuring they face the natural consequences of those choices. Dave was quiet for a moment, then nodded slowly. What do you need from me? Nothing illegal, nothing violent. Just moral support. You've got it. Emily screwed you over, and that kid's old enough to know better. Play stupid games, win stupid prizes. After lunch, I drove to downtown Boston, parking across the street from Hartwell & Associates. The building was a gleaming tower of glass and steel, the kind of place that projected success and respectability. Emily had been proud to work there, often mentioning the company's reputation and her role in maintaining their corporate culture. At 3:47 p.m., Evan emerged from the building, checking his phone and looking agitated. He was handsome in that young, unformed way that some women found appealing, tall and lean with carefully styled hair and clothes that cost more than he could afford. He walked to a coffee shop 2 blocks away, where Emily was already waiting. Even from a distance, I could see the tension between them. Emily's gestures were sharp, angry. Evan kept running his hands through his hair, a nervous habit I'd observed during my surveillance. I couldn't hear their conversation, but their body language told the story. Emily was scared, desperate. Evan looked like a man who'd just realized he was in over his head. They argued for 20 minutes before Emily stormed out, leaving Evan alone at the table. He sat there for another 10 minutes, staring at his phone, before finally making a call. His conversation was animated, probably calling his friends or family for advice. Good luck with that, kid. I drove home and spent the evening preparing. Tomorrow would be the first day of their new life together, and I wanted to make sure they had all the support they deserved. My lawyer had already filed the divorce papers. Emily would be served at work, in front of her colleagues, sometime in the next few days. The private investigator I'd hired had documented every hotel visit, every lunch date, every stolen kiss in parking garages. But that was just the legal side. The real justice would come from letting them experience the reality of their choices without my money, my connections, or my protection. I pulled up Hartwell & Associates' website and found the company directory. James Hartwell III, CEO and founder. Harvard Business School, member of the Boston Country Club, married to his college sweetheart for 32 years. Old school, conservative, the kind of man who valued reputation above all else. Perfect. I composed an email, careful to keep it professional and factual. Mr. Hartwell, I hope this message finds you well. I'm writing to bring a serious matter to your attention regarding 2 of your employees, Emily Forrester and Evan Miller. I have recently discovered that Mrs. Forrester and Mr. Miller have been engaged in an inappropriate workplace relationship that violates your company's policies regarding supervisor-subordinate relationships. Mrs. Forrester, as an HR manager, holds a position of authority over Mr. Miller, who is an intern in your program. I have photographic evidence of their relationship, including intimate encounters in your company parking garage during business hours. I believe you would want to be aware of this situation, both for legal liability reasons and to maintain the professional standards your company is known for. I am not seeking any personal gain from this information. I simply believe that companies should be aware when their policies are being violated by employees in positions of trust. Respectfully, Alexander Forrester. I attached 3 photos, nothing explicit, but clearly showing Emily and Evan in compromising positions on company property. Then I scheduled the email to send at 8 a.m. tomorrow, right when Hartwell would be checking his morning messages. By the time Emily and Evan realized what was happening, it would be too late. They'd have each other, just as they wanted. They'd also have unemployment, financial pressure, and a baby on the way. Sometimes the best revenge is simply letting people experience the full consequences of their choices. I poured myself a scotch and sat on my deck overlooking the harbor. The city lights twinkled in the distance, and for the first time in months, I felt truly at peace. Tomorrow would be interesting. The call came at 10:23 a.m. Alex? Emily's voice was shrill, panicked. What did you do? I was in my office reviewing quarterly reports when my phone lit up with her number. I'd been expecting this call, but not quite so soon. Good morning, Emily. How are you settling in at your new place? Don't play games with me. Mr. Hartwell called me into his office an hour ago. He had photos, Alex. Photos of me and Evan. I leaned back in my leather chair, watching the morning traffic crawl along the harbor. That sounds uncomfortable. What did you tell him? I told him the truth, that we're both adults and our personal relationship doesn't affect our work performance. And how did he respond to that? There was a long pause. He fired us, both of us, effective immediately. I'm sorry to hear that. You're sorry? Her voice cracked with rage. You did this. You sent him those photos. Emily, I think you're giving me too much credit. Mr. Hartwell is a businessman who received information about a policy violation at his company. He made a business decision. You destroyed my career, my reputation. How am I supposed to find another job now? I set down my pen and gave her my full attention. The same way everyone else does. You update your resume, you network, you interview. Of course, you might want to leave out the part about being terminated for violating workplace conduct policies. I hate you. The words came out as a whisper, but they carried more venom than if she'd screamed them. No, you don't. You hate that you got caught. You hate that your choices have consequences. But you don't hate me. You barely thought about me for the past 4 months. We need to talk, in person. No, we don't. We have lawyers for that now. Alex, please, I'm begging you. I have nowhere to go, no job, no money. At least give me something to live on until what? Until you figure out how to make this my problem again? I stood and walked to my window. You made your choice, Emily. You chose Evan over me. You chose deception over honesty. You chose to build a future with someone else. Congratulations. You got what you wanted. This isn't what I wanted. Then you should have thought about that before you started sleeping with a child who can't even afford his own rent. The line went quiet except for her ragged breathing. When she spoke again, her voice was different, calculated, manipulative. The voice she used when she wanted something. Alex, I know I made mistakes, but we can work through this. We can go to counseling, rebuild our trust. Stop. The word came out sharper than I intended. Just stop. You're not sorry you had the affair, Emily. You're sorry you got caught. You're not sorry you lied to me for 4 months. You're sorry it didn't work. That's not true. Prove it. Tell me one thing, just one, that you're sorry about that isn't really about getting caught or facing consequences. Silence. That's what I thought. I ended the call and blocked her number. My assistant knocked on my door 5 minutes later. Mr. Forrester, there's a young man here to see you. Says it's urgent. His name is Evan Miller. Interesting. The boy had more spine than I'd given him credit for. Send him in. Evan Miller looked exactly like what he was, a scared kid in an expensive suit he couldn't afford, trying to play in a league way above his abilities. His face was flushed, his hair disheveled, and his hands shook slightly as he approached my desk. Mr. Forrester, thank you for seeing me. I gestured to the chair across from my desk. Please sit. Though I should mention that this conversation will be recorded for legal purposes. His Adam's apple bobbed as he swallowed hard. Okay, I understand. What can I do for you, Evan? You can stop this. Whatever game you're playing, whatever revenge you're planning, just stop. Emily and we never meant to hurt you. I studied him for a moment. Up close, he looked even younger than his 24 years. How exactly did you think this would end? Did you imagine I'd never find out? That Emily would divorce me quietly and you'd ride off into the sunset together? We were going to tell you, eventually. When? After the baby was born? After I'd spent 9 months believing it was mine? Evan's face crumpled. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. How was it supposed to happen? I don't know. He ran his hands through his hair frantically. I never planned any of this. Emily and it just happened. One day we were working late and she was upset about something and you decided to comfort the married woman who was your supervisor. It wasn't like that. I leaned forward, fixing him with a stare that had made seasoned executives squirm. Then what was it like, Evan? Explain to me how you accidentally had a 4-month affair with my wife. He opened and closed his mouth several times, looking like a fish out of water. I care about her. I love her. You love her. I repeated the words slowly, tasting them. Do you know what love is, Evan? It's not just passion and excitement and stolen moments. It's commitment. It's choosing someone every day, even when it's hard. It's being honest even when the truth might hurt. I know what love is. No, you don't. You know what infatuation is. You know what lust is. You know what it feels like to be flattered by the attention of an older, successful woman. I stood and walked around my desk, stopping directly in front of him. But love? Real love doesn't destroy marriages. It doesn't create children in deception. It doesn't leave people homeless and jobless. Evan's hands were clenched into fists now. You're trying to destroy us because you can't stand that she chose me over you. Chose you? I laughed, and the sound was harsh in the quiet office. Evan, she didn't choose you. She was hedging her bets. She was keeping me as her safety net while exploring her options with you. If she'd really chosen you, she would have asked for a divorce months ago. That's not... She said what? That she was going to leave me for you? When? Next month? Next year? After the baby was born? I watched the doubt creep into his eyes. Let me guess. She said she needed time to figure out how to tell me. She said the timing wasn't right. She said she wanted to be sure about her feelings first. Each guess hit home. I could see it in his face. She was never going to leave me, Evan. Not unless she was forced to. She wanted her cake, and to eat it too. The excitement of a young lover, and the security of a wealthy husband. You're lying. Am I? Then why didn't she move in with you when I threw her out? Why isn't she planning a future with you right now instead of calling me begging for money? Evan stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. I'm not going to listen to this. You don't have to listen, but you do have to live with the consequences of your choices. I walked back to my desk and sat down. You're going to be a father, Evan. That means providing for a child, supporting a woman who's accustomed to a very expensive lifestyle, and doing it all on whatever salary you can find after being fired for a workplace relationship. I'll figure it out. I'm sure you will. You seem like a resourceful young man. I pulled out a business card and wrote something on the back. Here's the number for a friend of mine who runs a staffing agency. Tell him I sent you. He might be able to find you something entry-level. Evan stared at the card suspiciously. Why would you help me? Because despite what you might think, I'm not a monster. I don't want to see a child suffer because his father can't find work. I met his eyes. But understand this, my generosity extends only to legitimate opportunities. Don't expect handouts, don't expect special treatment, and don't ever contact me again unless it's through lawyers. He took the card with trembling fingers. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Thank me when you've managed to support your family without anyone else's help. After he left, I sat alone in my office, looking out at the city where Emily and Evan were probably meeting right now, trying to figure out their next move. They'd learn quickly that love without resources is just shared poverty. But that wasn't my problem anymore. My phone buzzed with a text from Dave. How'd it go? I typed back, better than expected. They're starting to understand reality. Good. Want to grab dinner tonight? Celebrate your freedom? I looked around my empty office, thought about my empty house, and realized that for the first time in months, I had nothing to hide, no lies to pretend to believe, no betrayal to ignore. Absolutely. I have so much to celebrate. 3 weeks later, I was having my morning coffee when the doorbell rang. Through the security camera, I saw Emily standing on my front porch, looking haggard and desperate. Her usually perfect hair was unwashed and pulled back in a messy ponytail. The designer clothes had been replaced by jeans and a wrinkled sweater. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. Hello, Emily. Alex, please. I need to talk to you. Her voice was hoarse, tired. Just 5 minutes. Against my better judgment, I let her in. She looked around our former home with hungry eyes, taking in the luxury she'd given up for her young lover. You look tired, I said, not entirely without sympathy. I haven't been sleeping well. She sat heavily on the couch where we used to watch movies together. Evan's apartment is small, and the neighbors are loud. How is Evan adjusting to unemployment? Her face tightened. He's looking for work. It's just taking longer than expected. I sat across from her, maintaining distance. What do you need, Emily? I'm pregnant, Alex. 12 weeks now, and I'm sick all the time, and we can't afford a decent doctor, and… She broke down crying, her shoulders shaking with exhaustion and fear. Despite everything, I felt a pang of sympathy. This was the woman I'd loved, planned a future with, imagined growing old beside. Seeing her broken and desperate wasn't as satisfying as I'd expected. What do you want from me? Help, just until we get back on our feet. A loan, or maybe you could talk to some of your contacts about jobs for us. Emily, we've been divorced for 2 weeks. You made your choice. I know I screwed up. But this baby, this innocent child doesn't deserve to suffer because of my mistakes. She was right about that, but it wasn't my responsibility anymore. What does Evan think about you coming here? Her silence told me everything. He doesn't know you're here, does he? He's proud, she said quietly. He thinks he can handle everything himself. But Alex, he's 24 years old with no real work experience. Nobody wants to hire someone who was fired for a workplace relationship. That's unfortunate. Is that all you have to say? That's unfortunate? Her voice rose with desperation. I'm carrying a child, Alex. I'm scared and broke, and I don't know what to do. I leaned back, studying her face. Do you love him? The question caught her off guard. What? Evan. Do you love him? Really love him? Or were you just bored with our marriage? She was quiet for a long moment. It's complicated. It's not complicated. Either you love him enough to build a life with him, or you don't. Either you're willing to struggle together and support each other, or you're looking for an escape route. I'm trying to do what's best for everyone. No, you're trying to avoid the consequences of your choices. Again. I stood and walked to the window. You want me to solve your problems, make your life easier, remove the difficulties that come with the decision you made. I just need help. You need to grow up. The words came out harsher than I intended. You're going to be a mother, Emily. That means making hard choices, sacrificing for your child, and yes, sometimes struggling to make ends meet. Most parents do it without running to their ex-husbands for rescue. She flinched as if I'd slapped her. You're really going to let me struggle? Let the baby I'm carrying suffer? It's not my baby. The words hung in the air between us like a physical barrier. And you're not my wife anymore. You made sure of that. Emily stood abruptly, her face flushing with anger. You're heartless, cruel. I don't know how I ever loved you. You loved my bank account. You loved this house, the security, the lifestyle. But me? The actual person? You were willing to betray me for months without a second thought. That's not true. Isn't it? Tell me, Emily. In all those months you were sleeping with Evan, did you ever think about me? Did you ever consider how your lies were affecting me? Did you ever feel guilty about planning to pass off another man's child as mine? Her silence was answer enough. I thought not. I walked to the front door and opened it. Goodbye, Emily. I hope you and Evan figure things out. Alex, wait. No, we're done. We've been done since the moment you decided to cheat on me. Everything since then has just been clean up. She left without another word, and I watched through the window as she sat in her car for several minutes, crying and making phone calls, probably calling Evan, probably fighting about money and jobs and the reality of their situation. That evening, Dave came over with takeout and beer. We sat on my deck, watching the sunset paint Boston Harbor in shades of gold and red. Emily came by today, I said. Yeah? What did she want? Money, help finding jobs, a rescue from the consequences of her choices. And? I said no. Dave nodded approvingly. Good. She made her bed. Now she gets to lie in it, with the intern. I keep wondering if I'm being too harsh. Are you kidding me? Dave set down his beer and fixed me with a serious look. Alex, she cheated on you for 4 months. She was planning to trick you into raising another man's child. She destroyed your marriage and your trust, and now she wants you to pay for the privilege? I know all that, but seeing her today, she looked so defeated. That's called consequences, buddy. She's learning what the real world looks like without your money protecting her from it. I was quiet for a moment, thinking about Emily's desperate face, her obvious fear about the future. Do you think I'm a bad person for not helping? I think you're a person who got screwed over by someone he trusted, and now you're refusing to be screwed over again. Dave leaned forward. Look, if you want to help the kid when it's born, that's your choice. But Emily? She's not your responsibility anymore. She chose Evan over you. Now she gets to live with that choice. What if they can't make it? What if they end up on the street? Then they'll figure it out, like millions of other young parents do every day. They're not helpless, Alex. They're just used to having things easy. That night, I lay awake thinking about the conversation. Part of me, the part that had loved Emily for 5 years, wanted to help, wanted to make sure she was safe, that the baby would be provided for. But a larger part of me, the part that had been betrayed and lied to and manipulated, recognized that helping would just enable more of the same behavior. Emily needed to learn that actions have consequences, that she couldn't charm or cry her way out of every difficult situation. And Evan needed to learn what it meant to be a man, to provide for his family, to take responsibility for his choices, to build something instead of just taking what someone else had created. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Mr. Forrester, this is Evan Miller. Thank you for the referral. I start Monday at a warehouse in Quincy. 15-hour, but it's a start. I won't forget this kindness. I stared at the message for a long time before responding. Good luck. Work hard and take care of your family. Maybe they'd make it, maybe they wouldn't. But for the first time since this whole mess started, it wasn't my problem to solve. I was finally, truly free. 2 months later, I was reviewing contracts in my office when my assistant buzzed the intercom. Mr. Forrester? There's a James Hartwell here to see you. He says it's about Emily Forrester. Interesting. I hadn't expected to hear from Emily's former boss. Send him in. James Hartwell III was exactly what I'd expected, silver-haired, impeccably dressed, with the bearing of a man accustomed to authority. He shook my hand firmly and got straight to business. Mr. Forrester, thank you for seeing me. I wanted to speak with you about the situation with your ex-wife and our former intern. What about them? Well, it's come to my attention that there may have been more to their relationship than I initially understood. He sat down and pulled out a folder. After I terminated their employment, I had our IT department conduct a more thorough review of their communications. He slid several printed emails across my desk. I scanned them quickly, my eyebrows rising with each page. She was embezzling? Small amounts, but yes. She was approving fake expense reports for Mr. Miller, padding his hours, even creating fictitious consulting fees that went directly to him. Hartwell's expression was grim. We're talking about roughly $15,000 over 4 months. I sat back in my chair, processing this information. Emily hadn't just been having an affair, she'd been stealing money to support her lover. Why are you telling me this? Because I wanted you to know that your information about their relationship led us to discover a much more serious problem. Also, he hesitated. Mrs. Forrester has been calling our office repeatedly, asking for her job back, claiming she was wrongfully terminated. She's threatened to sue for discrimination, saying we fired her because she was pregnant. And I wanted you to know that if this goes to court, we'll be presenting evidence of her theft. It won't just be about the affair anymore. It will be about embezzlement. That's a felony, Mr. Forrester. I studied the emails more carefully. They painted a picture of Emily I'd never seen. Desperate, manipulative, willing to steal to maintain her lifestyle and support her lover. The amounts were small enough to avoid detection, but large enough to make a real difference to someone living on an intern's salary. What do you plan to do? That depends partly on you. If she continues to threaten legal action, we'll have no choice but to press charges. But if she accepts that her termination was justified and stops harassing us. He shrugged. We might be willing to let sleeping dogs lie. After Hartwell left, I sat alone with the evidence of Emily's crimes spread across my desk. This changed everything. The woman I'd married, the woman I'd trusted with my heart and my future, wasn't just unfaithful, she was a thief. I thought about calling her, confronting her with this new information. But what would be the point? She'd already shown me who she really was. This was just another layer of deception. Instead, I called my lawyer. Robert, it's Alex. I need you to do something for me. No, nothing illegal. I just want you to make sure Emily understands the full scope of her legal exposure if she tries to cause problems for Hartwell and Associates. That evening, I drove to Evan's apartment building in Alston. It was a run-down triple-decker in a neighborhood that had seen better days. I sat in my car across the street, watching the building, trying to decide if what I was about to do was justice or cruelty. At 6:30 p.m., Evan emerged from the building in work clothes, looking exhausted. He'd lost weight since I'd last seen him, and his face had the drawn look of someone working too many hours for too little pay. He walked to the corner store, bought a few groceries, and returned to the building. 20 minutes later, Emily appeared at the third-floor window. Even from a distance, I could see her pregnancy was showing now. She looked out at the street with an expression I recognized, the look of someone feeling trapped. My phone rang. Dave. Where are you? We're supposed to meet for dinner. I'm sitting outside Emily's new apartment building, trying to decide if I should tell her boyfriend that she's a thief. Jesus, Alex. Why would you do that to yourself? Because he has a right to know who he's building a life with. And because you want to twist the knife a little deeper? I was quiet for a moment, considering his words. Maybe. I'm not sure anymore. Look, I get it. She screwed you over in ways you're still discovering. But at some point, you have to let it go and move on with your life. What if I can't? What if every time I think I'm past this, I discover something new that makes it worse? Then you deal with it and keep moving forward. But sitting outside her apartment building isn't dealing with it. It's picking at a scab. He was right, of course. But as I sat there watching the windows of that shabby apartment, I couldn't shake the feeling that Emily was still getting away with something. That she'd destroyed our marriage, stolen money, lied about everything, and the only consequence was having to live in a smaller apartment with her young lover. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Alex, it's Emily. I need to see you. It's important. Please. I stared at the message for a long time, then looked up at the apartment window. Emily was there, looking down at the street, holding her phone. She'd seen my car. Against my better judgment, I got out and walked to the building. The front door was propped open, and I climbed the narrow stairs to the third floor. Emily was waiting in the doorway of apartment 3B. I wasn't sure you'd come up, she said. I'm not sure why I did. The apartment was tiny, a living room barely big enough for a couch and TV, a kitchen that was more of a closet, and presumably a bedroom I couldn't see. The contrast to our former home was stark. Evan's at work, she said, settling carefully onto the couch. Her pregnancy was obvious now, her movements slower and more deliberate. What do you want, Emily? I wanted to apologize. Really apologize, not just ask for help. She looked around the cramped space. Living like this, struggling every day just to pay rent and buy groceries, it's made me realize what I threw away. And? And I'm sorry. I'm sorry I cheated on you. I'm sorry I lied. I'm sorry I tried to trick you about the baby. I'm sorry I destroyed the best thing in my life because I was bored and stupid and selfish. I sat in the only chair, a rickety thing that looked like it came from a thrift store. Why are you telling me this now? Because I finally understand what I lost. Not just the money and the house and the security. I lost you. I lost the man who loved me enough to work 16-hour days to give me everything I wanted. I lost my best friend, my partner, my future. Emily. I know it's too late. I know you'll never forgive me, and I don't deserve forgiveness anyway. But I needed you to know that I finally understand what I did. I looked at her sitting there, pregnant and poor and genuinely remorseful, and felt something I hadn't expected: pity. Not the kind that leads to reconciliation, but the kind you feel for someone who's finally learned a lesson that cost them everything. There's something else you need to know, I said quietly. I told her about Hartwell's visit, about the evidence of embezzlement, about the potential criminal charges. With each word, her face grew paler. "Oh, God," she whispered. "Oh, God, I never thought. It was just small amounts, just to help Evan with rent and food." "It was theft, Emily. $15,000 worth of theft." She buried her face in her hands. "What am I going to do? If they press charges, if I go to jail, the baby. That depends on you. If you stop threatening to sue them, if you accept responsibility for what you did, they might be willing to let it go. And if I don't, then you'll face the consequences of another choice you made." She was crying now, the kind of deep, body-shaking sobs that come from complete despair. "I've ruined everything. My career, my marriage, my future, and now I might go to prison." I watched her cry and felt nothing. No satisfaction, no anger, no sympathy, just emptiness where my feelings for her used to be. "You made choices, Emily. Every day for months, you made choices. This is where those choices led." "I know." Her voice was barely a whisper. "I know." I stood to leave, then stopped at the door. "For what it's worth, I hope you figure it out. I hope you learn to be the person your child needs you to be." "Alex?" She looked up at me with red, swollen eyes. Do you think you'll ever be able to forgive me?" I considered the question seriously. "I don't know, but I know I'm done being angry about it. What you did to me is in the past. What you do going forward is up to you." I left her there in that tiny apartment, crying for everything she'd lost and everything she'd never have again. As I drove home to my empty house, I realized Dave was right. It was time to stop picking at the scab and let it heal. Emily would face whatever consequences came from her choices. Evan would learn what it meant to love someone who was capable of betrayal and theft. Their child would grow up with parents who'd learned hard lessons about the cost of deception. And me? I was finally free to figure out who I was without the weight of their lies. For the first time in months, that felt like enough. 3 days later, Emily called Hartwell and Associates and withdrew her threats of legal action. She accepted full responsibility for her termination and promised never to contact the company again. 2 weeks after that, I received a wedding invitation. My college roommate was getting married in California, and he wanted me to be his best man. I booked the flight that same day. It was time to start living again.